The holiday weekend provided a short break from any big political news, but it was barely long enough to digest everything that happened last week. That included the release of the long-awaited DEC report on hydrofracking, which suggests that the state will allow fracking in some parts of the Marcellus Shale, as well as the decision on prison closures and the announcement of special elections to fill 6 vacant assembly seats and Anthony Weiner's congressional seat. Then there were also all those rumors about the governor's future political plans. Here to help us break down the rumors, the facts, and whatever's in the middle there. Our insiders are here, veterans of the Albany political scene, who join us each week to share their insights into the news. We're joined this week by Dave Catalfamo. He was former Governor Pataki's communications director and now works for Capital Public Strategies. Also with us is Bruce Jory. He was a senior advisor to 2 Democratic governors. He is now at Corning Place Consulting, and he teaches at UAlbany. Nice to see you, gentlemen.
Nice to see you.
Hope you had a good holiday.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rested.
Yep.
Loaded
Ready.
for bear.
Ready.
Okay. Governor Andrew Cuomo to bump Joe Biden in 2012.
Hey, strike while the iron's hot, right?
I have no idea what that means, Dave.
Well, look, I mean, I think that whether it's 2012 or 2016, political fortunes turn on a variety of things that often have nothing to do with even how great a job you do as a governor. And the reality is, if I were the governor, I'd be looking at, I mean, today before I came in here, they're talking about whacking Medicaid and Medicare and you know, federal assistance that will impact states. So no matter how good a job the governor does, he ultimately could still be looking at a stagnant economy, lessening federal revenues. And basically, even though he's done a good job in this session, and I think set himself up to grow into priorities from a spending point of view, the national economy may prevent him from doing that. And if that happens, then his political ambitions get sacked.
Well,
so,
but you can never take gay marriage away from him. I mean, that's a win, right?
The source for this rumor was none other than Bill Powers,
I know, it's so
former chairman.
fascinating.
One of the things I've learned is you would think in politics people know the other side. In reality, it's like talking baseball to Michael Jordan when you talk intra-democratic politics with Republicans, and vice versa when you talk to most Democrats about the Republicans. Look,
did Jordan play baseball?
Yes, he did,
Okay.
and he didn't play it very well, and he didn't understand
All
the
right,
game.
I get it. I got it. I'm there.
Look, I think Governor Cuomo is right. The more chatter on this, the less good it is for him. He needs to focus on being governor. Having said that, it doesn't really hurt him, but in reality, what he wants to avoid is the fate of Nelson Rockefeller and Joe Lieberman. What you don't want to become is what Rockefeller was, the Democrats' favorite Republican.
Right.
Or with Lieberman, you're the Republicans' favorite Democrat.
Right,
because they don't tend to do well in primaries. Mr. Huntsman may find that out because Democrats love John Huntsman. I haven't heard much of that from Republicans. Now,
it's an ironic thing, though, about presidential politics because in order, well, in any primary politics, right, in order to get there, you need the extremes of one side or the other to put you there. But then when you run in a general, you want the middle to like you. It's very...
And the other thing is what Bill Powers is reflecting the Republican path to the presidency, which is you get in line, and first you become vice president, and then you become president, and that's a good way. On the Democratic side, you know, Bill Clinton's great line, Republicans fall in line, Democrats need to fall in love in terms of nominating presidents, and I think he'd be much better off if he did a bang-up job as governor and then decided what he wanted to do rather than get waylaid. The other thing is, let's look at the big mission Joe Biden had this week for the president. One was negotiating, or the 2 missions. One was trying to negotiate an end to the debt limit crisis.
Didn't happen.
Wait.
Are we making a case for Andrew Cuomo?
No, hasn't happened yet. The other was going to the teachers union to secure that endorsement.
Right.
Those are contacts. Those are contacts. Yeah, by the way, if there was a change, I think it would be Hillary Clinton rather than Andrew Cuomo as vice president.
Interestingly, and before we, and this is really, look, the fact that we're spending so much time on this just goes to show you how much we love to spend all this time prognosticating about stuff that might not even really be, but it's really fun to do anyway.
Made up by a former Republican state chairman.
Okay, but hold on, it's July, and you know, we can talk about these things. We do have real things to talk about. However, I thought it was interesting that the most substantive sort of debunking of this trial balloon, if you will, came from a guy named Toby Hardman, who actually writes for the Telegraph, which is a British paper. But anyway, the last thing he said was it would be a slap in the face to Hillary Clinton, A. But B, I mean, you're talking about just in the same week when you have this Biden securing the teachers union nod, you have Andrew Cuomo being lauded by Republicans for, you know, being tough with unions. I mean, how are Democrats going to fall in love with that?
Well, except the governor has rang up a terrific session with a lot of substantive accomplishments across the ideological spectrum, and he was a governor who said what he meant what he said, and delivered on what he said he was going to deliver, and those are strong things.
Correct.
But he deserves an opportunity to see whether he can add mandate relief to the property tax cap, whether he can add job development, which both political parties and all politicians seem to not want to tackle the one issue the American people want, which is pragmatic job development strategies. See whether he can get that Reinventing Government initiative of the SAGE Commission up and going, and see whether he can get education reform amidst all this cutting, and see whether health care delivery. If he does all that, he'll be in a very strong position for whatever he wants to do.
The fault lines coming up, I mean, hydrofracking could be a potential fault line, right? Because there's going to be a certain percentage of the population who is just not happy, regardless. And it sounds like the noises are coming from the governor, who's being pretty pragmatic, backing the DEC report, but saying it was balanced, et cetera. Sounds like 85% of the Marcellus Shale open for drilling to me. Can he survive the backlash? There's going to be backlash from people like Mark Ruffalo and company, right?
And John Adams and many serious people in the environmental community. But there's also the bulk, I think, and the majority of the environmental community that's going to get behind him and say that you can do it responsibly. Taking the watersheds, both the Skinny Atlas and the New York City watersheds off the table was the key thing so far as, I think, allowing the issue to move forward. It also takes a large part of the New York City equation out of it when we come to talk about it. But let me just throw out this warning. Is, if he starts going halfway there, the reality is that it takes the industry a while to ramp up and actually start the drill. So the devil is in the details so far as how it gets rolled out, and could end up making no one happy and getting none of the benefit.
Right. Too much regulation means the industry can't drill it at all.
But it was bold and balanced in that it was counterposed to his strong move against Indian Point, which is the environmental movement's holy grail in terms of getting rid of it, not supporting it, but getting rid of it. And the reaction was relatively muted, and he got surprising support from people like the NRDC and other well-respected environmentalists.
Well, the timing, Bruce, right before the 4th of July weekend, I mean, come on, of course the response is going to be muted. Half the people aren't even paying attention. And another interesting piece, which actually sort of went under the radar, a smart piece that was put out by an upstate blogger, reporter, in I think the Utica paper. If, in fact, the governor is saying that he wants to replace Indian Point, then you're going to have to you're going to generate energy upstate. You're trading one problem for another. Hello, power lines. I mean, that's a fight right there, because they've got a power delivery problem, not just a power generation problem.
He has not been faint-hearted on this. He is tackling a huge issue in the energy delivery. One of the projects that he probably wished had been enacted was that Broadwater project for liquefied natural gas in Long Island Sound, which Governor Patterson, forgive a bad pun, Deep Six, because it was a water project, that would have brought an awful lot of natural gas into the equation, when you could have had perhaps a very different conversation about Indian Point. But energy is going to be key, and you're right, Liz, because it is not just the energy coming in, it's the transmission lines.
Well, there's a bottleneck right north of New York City.
The demand needs to increase again to the point where we actually have a bottleneck that actually needs to be surpassed. And what's happened, because the economy has actually gone down, that coupled with energy savings and efficiency stuff has bent that curve. So we're not going as hard as we used to.
So this is a potential problem, right? I mean, obviously, also, I mean, let's just say, I mean, looking way far down the road, when we get back to the whole 2016, 2012, et cetera, where does he go from here? Question: what happens the day there's a problem? And you're talking about drilling. There's going to be a problem.
No, I mean, but the DEC report actually went and looked at the Pennsylvania experience and looked at some of the things that had been popularized so far as I think I would call it some of the myth making with respect,
like water on fire, et cetera?
Like water on fire and things like that. And they took a hard look at it. And again, to the governor's credit and the Commissioner Martin's credit, it's been very empirical, science-based, a rational approach. And it's just the reality is that most of those great fears aren't there, and if they're able to put in place some reasonable standards, I think that they can.
And politically, he may have bought an awful lot of support. I don't mean bought in a tawdry sense, but secured an awful lot of support along the southern tier. So now, as you look at his support upstate, he's been very popular in the greater Rochester area. Central New York has been strong. not weak at all in the North Country. Mid-Hudson doing well with the property taxes. Now if he adds the southern tier to that,
well, in Western New York, of course, he was there today, Carl Palladino's hometown there, and that's exactly where he was talking about property tax cap and the savings that may or may not generate if, in fact, they manage to get mandate relief off the table.
And imagine if you turn this down. Now, I don't understand I'm not an expert in energy, but if you turn this down in the southern tier of New York, saw an awful lot of revenue and energy growth in the northern tier of Pennsylvania, their border.
Which is right now, that's the case.
He could have looked very bad in that portion of the state.
Look, I mean, but again, I'm going to say that this is the first step.
Yes.
The reality is, a couple years from now, I mean, in I think northern Pennsylvania, and this is according to the Pennsylvania DOL, they created like 50,000 jobs, over the past year in that
that's
industry,
a lot.
and they pay about on average $65,000 in that. I mean, those are great jobs.
Yep.
Those are important for the economy. So the governor got. He's done the right thing in my view, and he's been very, very matter of fact about it. But now delivering on it, and it's really part of the entire jobs agenda. I mean, again, I think setting the business environment and creating expectations for the business community that taxes aren't going to go forward, that there's stability in government, and that things can work is great. But now you got to go to the next step.
At the same time, which is delivering. Sure.
Yeah.
At the same time, you're actually downsizing government, and you announce that you're going to close 7 prisons, all but 2 of which I believe are upstate. I mean, there's one in Orange County too. But nevertheless, that's 500 jobs just in Rome alone.
That's right. And I mean, we could have, I think all of us here would have predicted that release on Friday, July 1st, or whatever.
At 4:45 p.m. Yep, sure.
But I mean, I think the reality is, and I hope, because I think there's some flexibility, that they give some additional flexibility to those counties where they've had a loss. Because look, what business wants to go in and locate next to a prison? Even an old prison site. They're not attractive places, but there are attractive places to grow jobs. And I hope that they allow the Commissioner of Economic Development and Chairman Ken and whatever to be able to be flexible with those benefits so that they can actually use them to get jobs in areas that are growing in those counties.
I don't disagree at all, but the other thing is that there is an opportunity here, and he did not pick on any one region of upstate.
One might argue that the North Country got away pretty...
Senator Valesky ended up with 2.
He didn't pick on just Republicans. There wasn't a partisan. He took some out in New York City.
Yeah.
It was a pretty balanced and fair package. But I agree with you. If his economic development people should go into overdrive to help those communities that are suffering prison losses from being able to find other economic development strategies that produce jobs.
But the Senate Republicans were so muted. Why? Right. Because they had been in on it and they knew it was coming down the pike?
Yeah, I think that there was an understanding, just as there was, I think, with this budget, that look, there were, billions of dollars of stimulus funding is falling off the table. We need to right-size a lot of these systems, and we've been avoiding it for years. Let's, all get in the tank together, do the hard thing, and
next year when we're all up for re-election, with the exception of the governor, it's a different story. Yeah. Let's just, speaking of elections, I want to finish on this. The special elections that the governor called to run concurrent with the primary, September 13th primary. The good government groups who have been pretty laudatory of him up until this point were quite critical of his decision to do this. Now, my understanding of the law, although there's been some disagreement on this, but Jerry Goldfeder was on the show not so long ago, election law attorney who worked with Andrew Cuomo, actually. You have to call a special for a congressional vacancy. You do not. You have the discretion for legislative seats, and yet he went ahead and did it anyway. Was it a smart thing for him to do?
I don't know if it was, it certainly wasn't a dumb thing to do. I mean, basically he followed the pattern. What the good government groups were asking to do was really to open it up so that it was full nominations and there could be primaries preceding the general election. And the tradition in New York has been that's not the way vacancies are. If they want to change the law to make it crystal clear, they can make a strong case for that. But one senses they ought to do it that way. The other thing is, what's interesting, we're going to have one really vibrant, vital, hotly contested race. You're going to have, for Darrell Towns' seat, you're going to have Senator Martin DeLonge's son, the councilman's chief of staff. a strong nominee of the Working Families Party, and Darrell Towns' sister, or if you really want to argue
His name, I think, is Jesus, the
No,
Working
really?
Families Party
Oh,
guy.
yeah, Jesus, yeah.
No,
my
Jesus. He
vote.
goes by Jesus, I'm pretty sure.
but Deidre Towns, who is
Right.
Assemblyman Towns' sister, is going to be in that race. So even with all that, you could have a very competitive race.
But we,
Last word to you,
we
Dave.
just sat here talking about how we got to save money and make tough choices and cut costs, and I think that flies in the face of it. Honestly, I mean, because it does cost additional money to run, general elections on primary days, and I haven't seen a resolution to the issue yet of upstate primaries, which typically
Which have curtailed hours,
have
right?
curtailed
also?
hours, and where the fairness is there. So I think from a cost point of view and that issue, I think it was the wrong move.
Okay, well, we are good. You disagree. Finally, it's about time. Dave Catalamo, I want to thank you very much. Bruce Story, thank you.
Thank you.
Next time, guys, you know what I mean? Really, like a lot of.
He's such a nice fella. I have
oh boy!
find the time.
All right, I gotta find more angry insiders.
Okay. Okay.
It was a vacation.
Nice
It was
guys.
very
Do
mellowing.
finish last. Leo DeRocher was right.